So let's get going with the topics for today, and I've just prepared a few slides. Most of the things will be discussed within Creo. It's a lot easier doing it that way. So I think that the most important, or one of the top things, is the global system colors. So PTC or Creo has been changing the colors from pre-wildfire up until the latest one in Creo 8. So every time there's a little bit of a system color change. I'll be working in Creo 8 today, so I thought this is going to be a good topic just to set the tone for user interface. And as you open up Creo, what do you see? What do you want to see? What's easier on the eyes? What's easier to identify things? So I always tell the customers that start with the default things. So go to the light previous version, Creo 7, 6, and 5, I think. Then if you like the darker look, change the system colors to one of the default ones. Then you can start tweaking it a little bit here and there. I know some of the customers will have a system color file that they will use, and 9 out of 10 times I'll get a phone call from those guys and say, well, something in my drawings, I can't see that properly anymore. I can't do this and that. And that's because you've used a predefined system color file and you're bringing that into a new version of Creo. So it doesn't happen that often, but you will have certain things that's not going to be that clear when you move to a new version if you're using a custom file. So I always tell the customers, use one of the default ones and then tweak here and there a little bit. That's just going to make your life a lot easier when you upgrade. It's just a quicker way of moving from one thing to another. Then from Creo 1, they introduced the tabs, or should I say the ribbon interface. So they've been working on this each version, and the tabs and groups are really powerful now in Creo 8. You can make and break as you please with that. So I'll be creating a group or a tab in today's webinar, and then add some icons in there. I'll add a map key in there as well, just to show you how powerful it is and what you can do with that. Then in Creo 8, they also added the open multiple options in the design features. So you can see in the screenshot I have on the left-hand side there, I'm busy creating a hole, but I have all the tabs open. So I can see the note, I can see the shape of my hole, and I can see my references all in one go. So they sort of allows us now to move those tabs around. And with some of the features, it was always jumping between certain tabs when you create that, like the sweep, things like the welding things. You had to jump between things to actually, or between tabs to see actually what your end result will be. So they've sort of moved that now, and you can move it to whatever place on your screen. It's going to remember that, and then obviously you can hide them again if you don't need it for future designs. So some nice things in the user interface. Then moving on to MapKeys. So MapKeys is just a macro or a sequence of keys that you will save, and then you can recall that and reuse it in a design process, or you can create drawings or anything like that with MapKeys. So whatever your key sequence is, it's going to remember that. You're going to type in the shortcut key. So in this example, we have OA, and that stands for Open Assembly. So instead of going File, Open, and then select your subtype as an assembly, I can just hit this map key, and it's going to open up only assemblies for me. So I normally do that for drawings, parts, manufacturing assemblies, things like that. So I don't have to go and go through those few clicks. So MapKeys, really easy to use. So this section that I've added in here, that's basically just how it will sit in your config.pro file. So everything is saved in your config.pro, and you can use this and you can copy the map key from one config.pro to another config.pro. So if you see your colleague's got a nice map key that's really useful, just ask them for his config.profile, take that map key section, copy that into your config.pro, and then you can use that map key as well. And so easy to copy and paste those map keys and make everybody in the office a little bit more efficient. The next topic that I want to discuss was user-defined features. So user-defined features is just a tool that you can use to create a group of certain features or parts, or not really parts, features that you will use in a design environment. So things like a specific hole that's got some odd dimensions. So it's not a M10 with a certain counter bore and a certain countersink, the default stuff. As soon as you go out of those defaults, then you have to type in information each time you create holes like that. So clearances and things like that, that's specific to your company, that's out of the standard that's normally there. You can create a user-defined feature and save that and reuse that in your design. So you don't have to go through all those clicks all the time. So there's two different ones that we'll create. So I normally use the standalone one. That's just easier to manage a little bit. And then you'll save all of this into a UDF library. And then once it's saved into that UDF library, you can recall it at any stage and just carry on with your design. Know everything is exactly the same. So really useful when you work in a big design office and certain people don't go off and create holes that's not company standard. So a great tool to capture that company standard as well and make you more efficient. Then moving on to the Creo library topic that I wanted to discuss. So I think in Wildfire or Pro Engineer days, the bolts and fasteners and things like that was sort of part of the Creo library. That's not the case anymore. We'll use the Creo Intelligent Fastener extension now. That's just a much easier tool to use, much more robust. You can do really a lot of things with that. That's part of the default Creo installation now. If you would like to go and create or customize the libraries for that, then there's a license involved. But out of the box, you can get all the standard stuff going using the IFX. Well, and that means that the normal Creo library don't have that in anymore. So you can see I still have it in there. I've got I think the Wildfire 2 library installed here. So you can see I still have the ISO fasteners, the JIS fasteners, metric stuff, and then I've added some engineering parts and things in there. So that's where I want to focus a little bit more when I talk about a custom library. That would be parts that you use often in your assemblies. And so something like caster wheels or certain brackets that you guys designed for your products, but it's used in different assemblies. Take those parts, put it in your custom parts library, and then reuse that. As soon as it's in a library, it's much easier to manage your drawings. You know, guys can't go and change library components. You can block that out. If you put it into Windchill, then you add the data management side to things. So I won't recommend putting the bolts and nuts in there anymore. I'll rather use the Intelligent Fastener extension. Okay, I think that was the topics I wanted to discuss. Just quickly, our training capabilities. So we can do virtual training due to the COVID restrictions. We can do in-center. So that's you coming to our center and we give you training in there on our machines, or we can do on-site. So just get in touch with the sales guy or myself. I can direct you as well into the right direction and get in contact with the training coordinator. Then just a quick slide on my details. So if you have any questions, you can send me an email. If you have any sales related questions, you can send that off to sales. You can also visit our Boundary Systems YouTube channel or our website. You'll get some information on there as well. And while I've got this slide open, if you have any questions during the webinar, feel free to use the GoToWebinar panel to ask those questions. We'll do a question and answer session after the demonstration, but if you get that in while you're thinking about it, then that's normally a good thing. So get them in, and then I can answer them afterwards. Okay, so let's get going and jump into Creo. And I'm just going to start a new part here. I just quickly want to go through the global settings. So like I mentioned during the presentation, these are the default settings that's in here. So I'm in Creo 8 at the moment. So if you want to go to the previous light version, you can see the background changing there. If you want to go to the dark version, so you can see that will change. And why I say using these defaults as a starting point, you can see all the graphics and all the lines and curves and sketches and quilts and things like that have predefined color schemes. Right? So if you go in here, I can change my geometry to yellow now if I want to. And that's a quick and easy thing to do that. Now, if you want to go a little bit further, I can import a system color file, and that is saved in my Creo standards. So this is just a folder structure that I have that will basically drive my libraries, all my materials, formats, anything that I might use on a regular basis. I save in here, and then even if I jump from one version of Creo to the next version, I just point my new installation to this folder, and I know everything is going to be more or less the same. So the one that I wanted to show was the pre-wildfire one. And for the older users, you will see this immediately as soon as I add some planes and things like that. So this version or this color scheme is great for working with imported geometry. The colors just stand out, the edges and everything is just much better. So I would have a map key that will alternate between this color scheme and the default one, depending on the work that I'm doing. So if I'm working with imported geometry and I need to fix it a little bit, I work with import data doctor, for instance, then I'll make sure I'm in this color scheme. If I'm doing any regular work, normal design type of things, then I would change back to my default color scheme. So that's just a quick example of using those color schemes to your advantage and making it easier for yourself. Right, so I'm going to switch back to default. And then the next thing that we'll add is some tabs. So let's say we need to create in our part mode, we need to add extra tabs, or we want to rearrange things a little bit. So you can see on the design or in the current mode, it's going to show that. And then this is all the tabs. So you can see we've got model analysis, and if you expand that, that's all the groups that's in there. So in my operations group, I've got the regenerate and the copy and paste functionality. So I can move this around to whatever makes sense for you. If you always were starting off with the extrude shapes, you can take that and we can say, take the shapes tab and move that up. And you can see it's changing in my graphics window here at the top. So now I've got my regeneration or my operations, and then my shape, I can move that up one. So now I know, okay, so there's my extrude features there. So I can sort of start with working left to right. If I want my surfaces next to that, I can just move that up as well. Okay, so now I know all my features that I'll use for creating my parts or assemblies. This will be over here now. So let's say you want to add a group or a tab. So you can just right click on the top tab and you say add tab. Okay, so there's my new tab now. And then I can say, well, this is, let's rename that to peer design. Okay, so there's my peer design tab. So now I can add groups in here. So I can, for instance, create, let's say I want to create stuff, and I use a lot of, there's already a tab called create. So let's rename that to be create. Okay, so now what I'll do is if I use the extrude feature a lot, I could just take that and drag it in there. You can see it's going to add there. So if I don't use revolves or things like that, I don't have to put that in there. If I use surface, the surface blend tool, quite a lot. Let's call it blend, or the boundary blend tool. I can take that, grab it in there, and now the boundary blend. So you can build this tab up with certain groups. That's making your life easier. Then you don't have to jump around between analysis tabs, things like that, when you start your design process. So it's very specific to a design engineer. All this information will be saved in a user interface file. So you save it there, that's your file. You can go and break as you please. So on top of that, I know there's a lot of system administrators that will copy those files over each time you start up Creo. So I always tell the administrators, try to make the design engineer's life a lot easier. Don't restrict them on interface things. Don't restrict them on colors that he must use. So make his life easy. So control the things that should be controlled, like library items, startup templates, drawing formats, things like that. That's going to make, that should be the same thing all over the company. That's the focus point of the Creo administrator or the Windchill administrator. Working with color schemes and things like that, let the design engineers work with that, make their lives easier. If it's easier on their eyes, they're going to be more productive, and you'll get those parts into the market a lot quicker. Okay, so that's what I wanted to show with the groups and the tabs. So let's move on, and I'm just going to show you the map keys that I've added, and then I'm going to create a new one and add that map key. So let's take that away, and then let's move to the quick access toolbar. So I just want to show you this first. So you'll see that I have this open assembly icon that I've added, and that's a map key, and you'll see it right here at the top as well. So I've used the standard assembly icon. I just added a little bit of a dot in there, and that's sort of telling me that's going to be my open assembly. So let me show you what's going to happen if I don't use my map key, how many clicks it is versus my map key. I just quickly want to change this back to my default. Okay, so if I'm in a designer, I need to open up an assembly. So I'm going to click open, and then I'm going to browse to my working directory. And you see now I see all the parts, all the drawings. So let's go to the webinar data. And we are working today in create data, and let's go. So you can see, well, okay, this is all my things in here. So drawings, family tables, a whole bunch of things, but I need to open up an assembly. So let's go back one. Let's make that my working directory. So the clicks would be open, go to the folder, and then I have to say, well, I want to open up an assembly. If you have subtypes like manufacturing or things, you have to click on that as well. Okay, well, I've created the map key where I can just go open, and it's just showing me my assemblies. So no drawings, no formats, no other bits and pieces, just assemblies. I can go and view that and just pick the assembly that I want to open. Okay, so that's a very simple example of map keys, but you can do that with anything. You can create and extrude, for instance. You can add certain holes using a map key. Whatever you can click, you can record, and that's your map key. Right, so let's see how the map key interface works. So I'm just going to search for map keys. Okay, so I've got a few here. So here's the one for the WF. So that's my pre-wildfire thing. So maybe I can quickly show you what I can do there. So that's the WF. So if I hit on the keyboard WF, oh, that's still activated. Sorry, I just need to activate the. There we go, and there's my change. So that's a map key that I ran in the background. Okay, so let's change that back, and let's just see how I've created that. So I'm going to recreate that from scratch. System colors. Maybe let's create one that's going to change it back to default, and that's gonna make a little bit more sense. So I'm going to say map key, and I'm going to call it let's see, default color scheme. Okay, and then I'm going to say, well, I'm going to start recording, and from here on it's going to record. So the prompt handling. So if Creo is going to prompt you for something, how do you want the map key to respond to that? Should it just take whatever you type in the keyboard? Should it take the default system defaults, or should it pause and ask you for certain input? So you can choose whatever is appropriate. In this case, we don't want anything. We just want to record the keys and change our default color scheme. I'm going to go record. I'm going to go file, options, system appearance, and I'm going to say that should go to default. I'm going to hit OK, and then I'm going to stop my map key right there. Okay, so it's just saying that there's already a D command to shortcut. So do I want to replace that? So yes, that's what I wanted to do. And now if I say, let's change it back to the wildfire, the pre-wildfire color scheme. And then I'm going to change it back to the new one we just created. Okay, so now I can quickly jump. So WF and DC will do that. So let's add those map keys. I'm going to add them here at the quick access bar at the top. So we're going to go to options. We're going to go to quick access toolbar. So well, please look at the map keys. And then I'm going to say, well, add the default color scheme in there. And then I'm just going to change that icon maybe a little bit. So let's say modify. Let's just change this. So let's just give this one some white colors in here. And let's remove that. And just changing that up. So you can import a picture or do whatever you want. Okay, so I'll say okay. So you can see that changed a little bit. You can also see it looks a bit funny at the top. And then I'm going to make my wildfire color scheme one. I'm going to keep that default. Okay. So modify, so choose button image, or choose from existing one, or reset the button, or you can do whatever you need to do with those buttons. So, okay. So I'm going to change it now to the wildfire color scheme by a simple click of an icon, and I can switch that back to a color scheme. Okay, so that's really a simple example of what you can do with MapKeys. Your limit will be your imagination. You can go with this as far as you like. Any sequence of keys that you can record, you can use macros for all MapKeys and record that. Save it into a tab or a group. Create the icons for that. It's just a simple click of a button, and it's going to do that for you. Okay. Then the next topic that I want to discuss was the UDF features. So I'm going to start something from scratch with the UDF feature, but first I'm going to apply a UDF so you can see how quick and how easy you can create that and reuse it. So I'm just going to create a simple extrude. I'm going to do something off center. Something like that. And then you guys notice that I've talked about the UDF library. So that's the one that you're going to use to create UDFs. If you want to apply a UDF, this is the icon that you'll use, user-defined features. So I have in my config.profile, I have a specific library setting for that. So if I go to File, Options, and to my settings, you can see, so all my format folders, the material folders, and my UDF ones are set up to show into specific folders. So there's the UDF one. Okay, so you set that up, and then you can save all of that in that particular folder. So let me just show you that in Windows before we carry on, so you know where I'm getting this. So I have a folder called PTC, then all my standard folders are in here. So symbols, system colors, tables, templates, all of that, and then I have a folder structure for my UDF. And in there I have UDFs that I've created for bosses, grooves, holes. This is the one I'm going to use now. And you can see the file extension there, GPH. Okay, so that's just the file extension for your user-defined features. And once again, depending on how it was created, you can copy this over from other colleagues and then reuse that in your design environment, making your life a lot easier. You don't have to go and redo these things. You can also add these to Windchill if you're working in a Windchill environment. You can create a folder in the Windchill library, and you can grab it from there as well. And from there, data management and all of those nice things come into play as well. Yeah, so then I've got a few slots ones in here. I'm going to use one of them as well now, and just show you how, what's important when you create these UDFs. So let's apply one, and let's do the slot one and see. And I want you to just focus on the prompts that it's looking for. So when you create these UDFs, it's going to ask you for certain references, and you need to think about the reference types that you want to use when you save a feature as UDFs. So what I do with a lot of the customers, I will say, well, don't use your design component to create the UDF. Let's create a separate component and let's just recreate the references. Because as soon as you place those UDF features, it's going to look for all the references. And we know in any design environment, those references can get out of control. You're not always 100% sure where Creo is getting them. So let's just take a step back and construct that references that you will use in a proper way. Maybe we can do it a little bit easier to make your life easier when you place those references. So this is an example of where references is not really that good. The prompt is also not that great. So this, I just said, well, select the surface. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and select the surface. Then it's asking me for a surface again, but at least we've got some sort of prompt here. We said surface 30 end. Okay, so let's see if we pick that in over there. And then now within Creo 8 or even Creo 7, we can do multi-body in a part. So you need to tell Creo on what body do you want to have that, if you have multiple body designs or not. I'm just going to say the default one. And then it's asking for a surface again. Let's pick this one over here. And you can see it's placing it outside of our component. So maybe we need to change one of these. So let's use that one instead. Okay, now it's jumping to the other side. Let's not use the top surface. Let's use the bottom surface. Okay, now it's jumping to there. Our last selection was also a surface, so let's use the back surface. And now it's jumping over there. Okay, so this is sort of a bad example, but this is how it can go wrong if you don't manage your references properly. Right, so let's go and view a different one. Let's see. I think the other slot, I also use that. So let's create one. Or let's apply it first. So I know for this whole feature, I'm going to use a datum point. And let's just pick some references over here, just to place a datum point. Okay, so I'm going to go user defined feature. I'm going to go holes. Let's say okay. And I only have three references that I have to select. So the first one, select the datum point where you want to place that. I'm going to select that, select my surface, and then the body that I want to use. And that's going to create that hole for me. So as soon as you do that, then you can notice that this is not really, it's a countable hole, but we've got a exit counter sync over here. And then also our diameters we used over here is not really standard clearances. So if you measure that, that's a 30. So depending on the M size, I think it's 10 or something like that. And then the hole, I know it's bigger. That was maybe a M14 or something like that. Okay, so then you have a hole diameter that's also not really a company standard. So I'm going to show you how I created that and how I managed the references. So the first thing that's really nice and easy, or that's the best way to make your UDF feature most robust, is to use coordinate systems and datum points. On datum points, there's a nice one called a field point. So a field point, you can just pick a surface, and wherever you click, that's going to create that one, that point for you. So notice that we don't have a linear reference. If you use the normal datum point, and I pick a surface, then I have to select references. Now, if you create UDF features and you use that datum point, then you need to specify the references that you selected over here. So using datum points, use that field one. That's really a nice and easy way to minimize your prompts when you create those datum or that user-defined features. I'm just going to cancel that point. I just wanted to show you that. Okay, and then we're going to create our whole feature. And this is where I wanted to show you that new interface as well. So you can notice my shape tab is not part of the tabs here at the top. I've sort of brought that out so I can see my shape all the time. So in previous versions, what you had to do, you couldn't have these tabs here separate. So I can have my shape view. I can drag that out. I can put it over here. And then I can check my placements all the time, so see what references I've used. As soon as I pick my datum point, I can see, well, I've used the datum point and the top surface, so that's fine now. And now if I go through my hole types, I can change that hole types. So I can add countable. You can see immediately the references over here. So you can see I've changed that one to a size that's applicable to my company. So I can make that 35. I can change this to 20 maybe if it needs to be below the surface. I can tell it, well, I need to go through all. As soon as I add through all, I can say I should have an exit countersink. I can also change my hole or my clearances to whatever suits our design criteria. Okay, so that's the data, that's the hole created, a custom hole that I wanted to place. Let's make this one blind. So, well, I just want to go make it 50 deep. So I'm not going to break it, so I can add the angle to whatever that needs to be. And I can say, okay. So there's our custom hole now. So this is maybe a hole type that you'll use for 90% of your design on a certain project. So let's save that out so we don't have to go through all those dimensions and clicks all the time. So you're going to go to Tools. You're going to say UDF Library. You're going to say Create. Now I'm going to just call it Webinar Hole. I'm going to make mine standalone. Say Done. No, I don't want the reference part. And then you can go and click the things that you want. So in this example, we only have a hole feature, but you can have as many features in here as you like. A hole with a round, a certain pocket with rounds and chamfers, certain sizes in them. You see there's an option to make certain dimensions variable. So as soon as you place the dimension, then you can change as soon as you place the user-defined feature, you can change dimensions depending on what you want. So let's maybe add that in here. I'm going to do that. So let's say I'm going to just take the whole feature. Just want to add that in there. Let's say Done. So now I need to give the user that's going to place this UDF some prompts to tell him what he needs to do. So yeah, datum point, that will explain what he needs to do. Surface, so maybe we can say that start surface. That's going to be a better description. The body is fine, and then that's all we needed. Okay, so from there we can go Done. Then I can say, well, I want to make some dimensions variable. So let's say we want to change the depth depending on the material or whatever the case might be of this counterboard. So I'm just going to say Define. You're going to say, see, it's going to show me all the dimensions. So drill angle, depth of hole, and then the counterboard. So I'm just going to say, select that one. I'm done on that. And enter prompt. I'm just going to say C for depth. Okay. And that should be it. I'm going to say OK. And done. And you'll notice in the message window, it says, well, your web hole user-defined feature has been saved. Okay, so if you have a proper library, your next step should be to take that and move it into the library. So I'm just going to take that web hole file. I'm going to say, copy that into my Creo standards UDF folder. And this is holes. I'm going to grab that there. Set paste, and that should be it. Okay, so our user-defined feature is made now. So now we're going to go and we're going to say new part, and we're going to assemble that, or rather use that in our design process. So extrude, just a simple block hole. Then I'm going to create my point. Of course, I will need a point for that. Place it wherever I need to. or I can use a field point like I did with the user-defined feature. But when you're designing a part, there most probably will be some sort of dimension, some design intent that you'll need to capture. And I'm going to go to user-defined features. I go to my holes. There's my web hole that I've added. I'm going to say OK. Yep, I want to place that. I'm going to pick my point, pick my start surface, pick the body that I want, and there's my hole. Yeah, so if you add some variable things, then you can change that. So there's my dimension for the hole. So I could say, well, I don't want that 20. In this scenario, I want that 25. You can see it updated, made it a little bit deeper. Just put it like that. Let's change that back to 20. You can see that's going to update. Make that 10. You can do whatever you need to with that variable. So depending on what you want to do, you just have to plan your user-defined features a little bit and always be wary about the references that you will select. Okay, so let's go on to the next topic, and that's the library stuff that I want to discuss. So the first thing that I wanted to mention was the custom library. So let's go back to assembly. Okay, so I'm going to use this assembly next. And let's just say we're going to assemble some parts. And you'll notice that as soon as you have your library set up, you'll have this basic library in your open tab. As soon as you pick on that, then all your library things will be in here. So like I've mentioned, I still have the ISO fasteners things in here. Don't use that anymore. Rather use the IFX stuff, the intelligent fastener extension things. But things like engineering parts, bearings that you want to use, rather add things like this that you can download from Trace Parts or from some of those library things or a company standard things that you'll use often in your design. Add those to your custom library and leave the bolts and nuts and pins and things like that for IFX. Okay. So mine is locally on my hard drive. Same rules are for Windchill. You can put this into your Windchill library and you just grab them off there. You can make them read only so other users can't go and change them. And this is how mine is set up. So I just quickly want to show you, if you go into Creo or into Windows Explorer, you can see there's my bearings and things like that. So there are a few files in here, your MNU files, CTG files that you'll need to update and set when you use it on a local machine. You don't need this for Windchill, but if you're running it off a map drive or something like that, then these MNU files will actually show you what's in there. So there's all my library items. So there's the folder structure with the description, the engineering parts, the manufacturing library, the bearings. So all of those are the information you will see when you click on the basic library. So you have to have your folder in there and then a description in there. If I go in here, bearings is not a good example. Let's go to connectors. Cylindrical, so you'll see all those structures. So each of these subfolders will have an MNU file that's going to tell Creo where the folders are and what their descriptions are. Okay, so that's just custom libraries outside of Windchill. Inside Windchill, you just go and create them and you go and pick them off there. Okay. With this basic library, important as well is a configuration option setting that you have to set for that. So it's called Pro Library Directory. So you can see mine is showing to that PTC Creo Standards library folder. Okay, so you need to set that, and that's going to give you the option to open up those library components from the library folder. Okay. It's also going to make the life easier when you regenerate your models. So if Creo can't find a model in your current working directory, then it's going to scan through your library items as well. And that's why those MNU files and things are also important, just to speed up that process. Okay, so let's go on to the IFX things. So those are under Tools, Intelligent Fasteners. So as soon as you assemble those, it's going to ask you for some prompts. So I need to select an axis. Let's just show that, so I can show you how I pick that. So that's going to be my center point, where the screw head is going to start at the top, and then where the bolt or the thread is going to start. So depending on what you have, you're going to pick that. So the first selection I'm going to make is just this bottom surface. And I'm going to say, okay. I want to continue on that. Okay, so you can see the Intelligent Fastener extension is going to give you a 2D feedback all the time. So depending on what you pick, that's gonna create that. So you can see I've picked a certain bolt type or screw type. I have all the catalog file types in here. So you can add to this if you have the full license, but I'm running the full license now, but you can play around with it and see what you can do in the normal one. Well, you can do most of it. You just can't change these catalog files. In my case, I did change some of them. Okay, and then what thread type do you want? So depending on the screw type that you've selected, you can pick that. You can set clearances, or you can measure dimensions. That you can pick the length that you want, or you can tell Creo, well, I want to calculate this automatically, and you can see, well, it's going to pick a screw and it's going to add one that's long enough. If that's not the case, what you want, you can go to 80 and see that's maybe a better option for you depending on your design scenario. You can pick that. Then do you want to add washers? So you can see in my graphics here, I have a washer. If I remove the washer, that's not there anymore. If I don't want the nut, if I'm going to make some thread into another component, I can remove that. But in this case, we want washers on both sides, and that means we need to go back to the 90 length. Do you want to add counter bores? So as soon as you add that, notice what's going to happen. That's going to change, so I can just recalculate that. It's going to use the shorter one. And do you want to change the counter bore diameters and the depth? Yep, I can do that. Give us a little bit more clearance over there, maybe even more, 20. And then let's make it just 13 deep. Okay, so it's going to be a little bit below the surface, but that's fine. That means we've got clearances in there. Okay, and this is the same workflow you'll use for every pin or screw that you're going to place using the IFX extension. I'm just going to say okay. So it picked up that it's part of a reference. So I don't want it in all the reference. I just want it in this single instance. And there you go. Your bolt is placed with your configuration. Okay, so these two examples are more or less the same. The bolt's going through. In this one over here, I've just created the drill hole, and then I've added thread into the second part, so I don't have a nut in there. So I just want to show you how that's looking. I just created a cross section. Just going to activate that, and then let's view that normal. So you can see in the top part, we have some clearance in there, and in the bottom part, a hole is drilled smaller just to leave us room for the thread that we need to tap in there. Okay, so all this was done with the IFX extension. Okay, so really robust tool to use. If we're going to go to this one, you can see I have clearance holes through both components, and here's our thread from our nut just overlapping there. That's fine. That's what we want to see. Got a little bit of a clearance for our washer. We've got some nice clearance for our screw head to fit in there, and clearances for all of that. Yeah. So MapKeys, you can record those as well. Save it as a map key. Just run the map key, and it's going to place that hole for you. You don't have to go and change all the values of things all the time. Same for a user-defined feature. When you create things like that, maybe the user-defined feature is a little bit better. You can use that and make your life a lot easier. Okay, so that was the topic that I wanted to discuss today. I don't see any questions yet. I'm going to give you guys a minute or so to get those questions in, and I'll answer them afterwards. In the meantime, I'm going to put my contact details up back. So if you need to take a screenshot or write that down, you can quickly do that. Okay, so I don't have any questions coming in, so I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar. Thank you for joining us today, and hope to see you soon.